This is the story of a case that seemed like a simple robbery, but became one of Japan's most infamous unsolved mysteries. It's even considered the start of firearms crimes in Japan, drawing in both Chinese and Canadian authorities. The case rocked the police department, which eventually pleaded for public help. This is the unsolved case of the Nanpei Owada supermarket. On July 30th, 1995, at around 9:17 p.m., 3 part-time female employees were found shot dead at the supermarket. Noriko Inagaki, age 47, was found first with 2 gunshot wounds. She hadn't been restrained, so investigators believe she was the first victim. Megumi Yabuki, 17, and Hiromi Maeda, 2 high schoolers, were found tied together with adhesive tape over their mouths, each shot in the head at close range. Noriko's acquaintance, who came to pick her up, discovered the bodies, prompting an immediate investigation. Initially, the police suspected a robbery, given that the crime took place in a well-known supermarket. The 2 high schoolers were even bound, as if they'd been kidnapped. But upon searching, police found no signs of theft. No safe was tampered with, cash and valuables remained untouched, and the office showed no evidence of a break-in. So, what was the motive? Let's look at what happened that day. July 30th, 1995 was the last day of a 4-day Ryokaze sale at the Nanpei Owada supermarket, which made the Sunday even busier. Megumi, who worked the night shift, arrived on her bike from home around 4:48 p.m. Noriko, the store manager, had a friend drop her off, and they'd planned to meet up after her shift ended at 9 p.m. The shift was from 5 to 9 p.m., and Noriko was responsible for the store's cash deposits in the safe. Around 5:30 p.m., a customer mentioned seeing a suspicious man, around 50 years old, wearing a white shirt and gray pants, loitering outside and peering into the store. Since he didn't do anything overtly alarming, the report was brushed off. An hour later, a male employee finished his shift and left, leaving just 2 women in the store. Despite this, it was far from quiet. Traditional Japanese music filled the air from a nearby Pon Odori festival at Kitanohara Park, just 30 meters away. The taiko drums and other instruments added a lively backdrop to the night. At around 6:50 p.m., Hiromi, who wasn't scheduled to work, came by to check her future shifts. After a quick chat with Noriko and Megumi, she decided to stay, planning to leave with Megumi later. With the heavy customer flow, Hiromi naturally pitched in to help. After an hour before closing, things slowed down. Noriko figured they wouldn't get any more rushes, so she closed her register early and took the cash to the second-floor safe. A witness saw Hiromi waiting by Megumi and overheard someone suggest, "Let's go to the festival together after work." At 8:30 p.m., a customer noticed a man in his 40s or 50s wandering around the store without buying anything. It's unclear if he was the same suspicious man seen earlier. 15 minutes later, a car drove by, with the driver, a man, peering into the store, though no description was noted. A receipt found later showed that around 8:51 p.m., Hiromi bought milk and eggs. At the same time, Noriko chatted with a neighbor while closing the cold section's curtain in preparation for closing. This neighbor also spoke briefly with Hiromi, who confirmed she'd be going to the festival with Megumi after their shift. This interaction was likely the last time anyone saw the 3 victims alive. Just before closing, a young couple came in, bought groceries, and left in a white sedan. Their identity remains unknown, but investigators thought they might have seen something crucial about the night's events. With the taiko drums at their loudest, the festival reached its peak as Noriko closed the store, locking the doors and turning off the lights. A nearby resident parking his car noticed a suspicious young man in the store's office aisle. When he shone his car lights in that direction, the man tried to cover his face and walked away. Soon after, the festival ended, and the once lively area grew silent. At 9:15 p.m., Noriko called her acquaintance to pick her up from the store. Around this time, the store's security system activated, and the entrance door locked, only to be deactivated and unlocked shortly after. It's assumed that the three were threatened and forced back inside. Around 9:17 p.m., a couple of high school students heard loud noises near the supermarket, likely gunshots. Several neighbors reported the same sounds. When Noriko's acquaintance arrived, she wasn't outside, as planned. He waited, noticed the office lights were still on, and, concerned, asked a nearby restaurant landlady to accompany him inside. Around 10 p.m., they entered the store, finding the front door unlocked. The landlady went into the office, but due to her height, didn't have a full view, so she called Noriko's friend to check. And that's when they found the horrific scene: blood pooled on the floor and 3 bodies with gunshot wounds. They immediately reported the scene to the police, who arrived to find the store's front door unlocked with no signs of forced entry. Inside, the evidence told a chilling story. Noriko and Megumi were dressed in plain clothes, ready to leave. Noriko was lying near the office safe, shot twice from close range, with burn marks indicating proximity to the muzzle. Megumi and Hiromi lay bound and gagged in front of the safe, each shot once in the head. Investigators believe the perpetrator used one hand for the gun and the other to handle adhesive tape, which bore fingerprints and sweat traces. The crime scene was meticulously clean, with no disturbed items besides an apparent gunshot mark on the safe. Careful not to step in the blood, the perpetrator left few traces, but investigators found about 10 footprints, which matched 2 different shoe types. One set was from a brand manufactured in Hiroshima and sold in local stores, while the other had been available in 1990 to 1991 at Marui. The shoe size was 26 centimeters, and traces of iron fillings, clay, and moss suggested the perpetrator might work with metal, possibly in ironworks. Forensics confirmed the close-range gunshots, each bullet passing through the victim's brainstems, resulting in instant death. The precision indicated the perpetrator was skilled with firearms and likely experienced in killing, leading investigators to suspect a trained shooter or even a hitman. Ballistics show that the bullets were fired from a Filipino-made Sanders Bingham .38 caliber handgun, a low-accuracy imitation of a Colt. The fact that the killer used this type of gun yet still fired with such precision led investigators to suspect someone highly skilled with firearms. The adhesive tape used on the victims had fingerprints and mitochondrial DNA different from the victims, likely belonging to the killer. Investigators also found glove marks on a desk in the office, suggesting the killer wore gloves initially but removed them when handling the tape. Despite these clues, the investigation hit a wall due to the lack of solid eyewitnesses or detailed descriptions of the suspect. Following the incident, the supermarket changed hands and became Himawari, but closed for good by 1998. The building was later demolished, leaving only a parking lot in its place. Media coverage continued with hopes someone would recognize details or offer new leads. In 2001, a letter surfaced from a gang member in detention claiming a former self-defense force officer was responsible. However, no further information came from this tip. In 2003, another lead emerged when a man in his 70s, arrested for attempted bank robbery, was found to have used a firearm with ballistic similarities to the Nanpei case. Although he had a history of violent crimes, including the shooting of a police commissioner, he denied involvement in the Nanpei murders. Then in 2009, a Japanese death row inmate in China claimed he knew details about the case. A former gang leader, he mentioned that a Chinese man in his gang, who was in Japan at the time of the incident, might know the killer. Investigators tracked down this man, originally from Fujian, who had lived illegally in Japan, was deported, and later immigrated to Canada. He eventually settled in Toronto, working at a grocery store and living with his family. Another gang member suggested this man had inside knowledge about the store's cash handling before the murders. The Japanese government eventually secured an arrest warrant for the Chinese man, alleging a violation of the Passport Act, and requested his extradition from Canada. In September 2012, the Canadian court approved the extradition, and by November 2013, he was sent to Japan and arrested. Yet, despite hopes, he provided no information about the Nanpei case, and the investigation stalled once more. As the case dragged on, the 15-year statute of limitation approached in July 2010. Fortunately, a revision in the Penal Code and Criminal Procedure applied retroactively to cases punishable by the death penalty, extending the statute indefinitely. This case remained the oldest in the Special Investigations Division, with authorities working tirelessly. In February 2015, an update revived public interest. The fingerprints found on the adhesive tape were identified. However, they matched a Japanese man who had died about a decade earlier. Investigators had used a special chemical to enhance the prints and compare them against 10 million records. 8 feature points matched the deceased man's prints, but this fell short of the 12-point match required to confirm a definite match by police standards. Despite not being conclusively identified as the perpetrator, the interest in the man's background grew. He had been a transportation industry official living in the Tama area, with a white sedan similar to the one spotted near the store. Around a month before the Nanpei incident, his son was involved in a costly traffic accident, which added financial stress. Notably, he had previously been questioned about the case as a witness, and his fingerprints were in the National Police Agency's database due to a bonsai theft 2 years before. Yet, evidence against him was inconclusive. His alibi was supported by time card records, and there were inconsistencies in DNA analysis from his relatives. The police suspected the duct tape might have been touched by others around him, so the investigation continued. On the 23rd anniversary of the incident, in July 2018, the police released more details, hoping to identify a young couple who had shopped at the store just before closing. They had bought groceries, including bean sprouts, ham, and okonomiyaki ingredients, and left in a white sedan. The police also sought information about an unknown woman seen entering the office before the incident, whose lipstick-stained cigarette butts were found in an ashtray. Her DNA didn't match any employees or vendors, and no one recognized her, leaving yet another mystery. In 2020, investigators received a lead that tied back to 2009. Striation marks similar to those from the Nanpei case were found on a handgun seized from a gang member's home. This gang member, a 43-year-old serving time for drug violations, claimed he acquired the gun around 2009, but couldn't recall the source. While police doubted his direct involvement in the incident, they began investigating his acquaintances, suspecting one of them might have owned or known about the gun during the time of the murders. The Metropolitan Police also collaborated with the Philippine police to trace the distribution of the gun, hoping it would lead back to the killer. As detectives continued to probe the possible motives, they revisited the robbery theory. The Nanpei Owada supermarket had long been infamous for lax security, often leaving the office door unlocked even at night. Employees would openly carry cash from the registers to a second-floor safe using an outdoor stairwell visible to anyone nearby. Noriko herself had reportedly expressed concerns about this risky procedure, making the supermarket a potential target for criminals. Noriko's body position also raised suspicions. As the store manager with access to the safe, it seemed plausible that the killer had tried to force her to open it. The two younger employees were bound and gagged, possibly to prevent them from interfering, while Noriko was left untied, likely to gain her compliance. When she didn't cooperate, the killer may have become agitated, abandoning the plan and shooting all three victims before fleeing. With 4 bullets used on the victims and 1 shot aimed at the safe, it's possible the killer fired at the safe to intimidate them or as a last-ditch attempt to open it. Several witnesses reported seeing suspicious individuals around the supermarket on the day of the incident. A middle-aged man peering into the store, another man loitering without buying anything, a white sedan slowly driving past, and a man who turned away and walked off when a neighbor's car lights illuminated him near the store after closing. These figures added to the mystery, fueling speculation that the crime may have involved multiple people. The robbery theory seemed the most plausible, but there were inconsistencies. For one, there was no direct evidence that the killer tried to steal from the safe. The investigators noted that the footprints at the scene suggested a simple in-and-out path. The killer entered, walked straight to the safe, lingered briefly, then left after the shootings. Nothing in the office appeared rummaged, and no drawers were opened. Oddly, Noriko's wallet was untouched, and a paper with the safe's passcode was left out on her desk. If this was a robbery, why wouldn't the killer have forced Noriko to open the safe, especially since the key was still in it? Another disturbing detail, Noriko was shot twice, once in the left forehead at close range and once directly on top of her head. This ruthless method of shooting was hard to execute, leading many to believe that the killer had a personal grudge against her. This grudge theory gained traction, prompting a deeper look into Noriko's past. Noriko had previously worked as a hostess and had a falling out with an acquaintance. According to those who knew her, she had received threatening letters containing box cutter blades with messages like, "If you continue like this, you will die." Although the sender's identity remains unknown, some believed it to be the same acquaintance. Noriko was known for her temper and had reportedly tried to cut ties with this man, possibly over financial issues. This backstory led many who knew her to think the case wasn't a robbery, but a murder based on personal vendetta. As for the two teenage girls, there's no indication they were the targets, leading many to believe they were tragic, innocent bystanders if the grudge theory is correct. Some even speculated it might be a mix of both motives, grudge and robbery. The Nanpei Owada store had a history of shoplifting, and the owner had once put up a sign aimed at thieves and bastards, which could have sparked resentment. Perhaps someone wanted to teach a lesson but escalated in violence. However, this theory lacks strong evidence. Today, this case stands alongside the Setagaya family murder and the Sophia University murder as one of Japan's most infamous unsolved mysteries of the Heisei era. Due to the elimination of the statute of limitations for severe crimes, the Metropolitan Police continue their investigation, even offering a 6 million yen reward for information that could finally bring justice to the victims. Friends and family have held memorials for the victims, praying for answers. So, what do you think about this case? Which theory makes the most sense to you? Let me know in the comments. And that is all for today. Thanks for watching.